Hey, Josh.
I think so.
We'll call to order the regular October school board meeting for the Solon Community School District. It is the mission of the Solon Community School District to engage every student in opportunities to learn, lead, and grow. Roll call.
Roll
Here.
Wolf. Here. Valeska.
Here.
Coons.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Student rep Bree Henning.
Here.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's the guy to roll. I barely got out of my seat. You sort of roll. Roll. Welcome, everyone. I think I know everyone is in the audience, so that's always a nice thing. Celebration of achievements. Davis.
Drew?
Let's start a number of here. Got my sticky note here.
Okay.
I'll just roll through them here real quick. We had our ag students that are going to Prairie this year. Just a kind of a celebration. They had the first FFA event, their Green Hand event the other week, where a dozen of them went up and did that, and they had pictures today. So I wasn't able to get a picture yet, but she said she'd get me one when we have that going. So a lot of students that are just feeling like that's a real good fit for them and really finding some success up there. So enjoying that program. Mr. Cooper's space, just a lot of work by Mr. Cooper, by Brian's crew there to get him going in his space right back here. So just having that up and rolling, we're still working on it and getting a nice first aid kit for him and some of that stuff. But he's put in a tremendous amount of work to get that going and to have students in that area. So that's been great as well. Our workplace learning, kind of to go with our CTE, but as I said, I think at the last meeting, we had a 43% increase in our students who signed up for a job shadow compared to last year to the first window this year. So working with that workplace connection at Kirkwood and just having students take advantage of those opportunities, we're starting to see that they're doing that. So making sure we continue to make them aware of that and encourage them to take part in that. And then lastly, just the kind of the opening of the soft opening of the pays, which is downstairs here, just a little bit into the old middle school there, but PACE is the practical assessment exploration system. Our special education teachers and associates were able to get a training on that and take a look at that during our PD day on Monday. I really think it provides a great opportunity for some of our students to get some employability skills, to work on some of those things for gainful employment. So I think as we work through that and again, it just provides another opportunity. I think that's the biggest celebrations is the continued opportunities for all of our students at the high school.
Middle school, consider us what we define as a celebration or an achievement, and 9 weeks into the year, but we got all of our assessments done, benchmarks and map testing, which will lead into the information I bring next week, but that we always call that a victory when we get that wrapped up and get back to the real work. We pushed both vocal and band concerts to a fall concert this year, and so typically they spend all semester preparing for the winter and then all second semester preparing for the spring concert. So they were pressed and gave 6 fantastic performances the last couple of weeks. We had a student, Emma Olson, get Opus Honor Choir. We hadn't had one of those in a couple of years, so that was exciting. And probably the greatest achievement, if you will, is we suffered through maybe. We had a 6-8 lock-in last Friday, and traditionally we had done that type of activity with 5th and 6th graders, and we did a dance type thing with 7th and 8th graders. And the last couple of years, the 7th and 8th graders really gravitated more towards the open gym, rec, fun activities thing. So we said, let's throw them all together and see what happens, and they don't like really well, so we're happy.
From the intermediate standpoint, like Mike said, we closed up all of those beginning of the year benchmarks, but even more so, we've gotten into our writing units, and writing celebrations are being planned for next week. So the first unit's coming to a close, and it'll be good to see some of the growth kids have made in those units there. Probably the biggest celebration that we have at SIS is that our playground is finished and kids are playing on that. They have loved every bit of that, so there were some really fun photos in the information Dr. Idle sent out earlier this week, so just nice to have a little extra space and equipment for kids to play on. That's the big woo-hoo going on at SIS.
Perfect. Like Mel and Mike said, sorry, I'm late, conference. We had, last week, we did a data review with each grade level. And so we took, the grade that the teachers were sending their kids to, I guess. We looked at their beginning of year data the year prior. Those teachers looked at that and just like, where did we see kids grow? Where do we see maybe not as much growth that we wanted to see? What did summer slides look like? And then what implications does that have for teaching this year? And how can we adjust some pacing or scope and sequence? And so we just had some really good data conversations and celebrations to see how much kids have grown. And the minimal summer slide that a lot of our kids had. So that was fun to see. And then I think the other big celebration we had was our professional learning day on Monday. It was just a really great day of learning. In the morning. We worked on some math workshop implementation. We had Jennifer Lemp here at the beginning of October, and she kind of walked us through the next step in implementing math workshop with learning stations. And so teachers got to kind of dig into that deeper in the morning and do some planning around that. And then in the afternoon, we had Danielle Tice here again with Teach to Heal and working on like student skills and teaching skills. So we did that learning at SIS in the afternoon. Just lots of positive feedback, and we feel like the work that we've implemented with Teach to Heal for the last 2 years, we're seeing a lot of celebrations and payoff and differences in how teachers are interacting with students, how students are interacting with each other, how the building feels and functions, and then kind of where we are going next with teaching specific student skills. 2 celebrations there.
Thank you. That's very nice. It's good to get back to hearing from our different buildings here. So, not that we don't like hearing, I know, but you know.
I'm not as articulate.
You're not,
so-
he's not as articulate when it comes to actually talking about the thing, so it's good to get some first-hand reports back, so. Focus on learning, career, technical education, based on the order of how long I've known you, Jody, Nathan, and JJ are gonna be presenting, so.
Understanding, that's what we do.
Right.
CTE at the high school. So, federal purveyance requires us to have, 4 programs of study. Each service area needs to have a CTSO or a student organization. And then we also are required to have a middle school CTE class as well. This is our current pathways, and this is a snapshot actually from the end of last school year. So health sciences can no longer be counted because they changed the way the academy program works at Kirkwood. So we've always counted that, even though all of our students went to the Kirkwood Academy. They've shortened it so students can get their CNA in a much smaller amount of time. So there's not enough hours in that program. But now that we have students going to prairie, we can now add ag as a stream, at least for this year. We'll see how it plays out. But those are our current pathways that we have within CTE.
Yeah, I mean, as far as what I would see as success is just having an actual shop area, not sure. It's been quite an adjustment. I mean, just trying to get everything set up, and it was one of them. Didn't really get myself going until when school started. So, I mean, the kids helped out a lot on getting that space set up. Still quite a bit of space for stuff that needs to happen yet, but I think that's coming in time. So, ventilation systems and things like that. So, as far as being able to add courses, that was a big plus. Getting away from just having the 2 courses, and we're also able to bring in an intro welding class, and then another like more advanced construction class, so kids can hopefully get some hands-on experience, do some different building, storage sheds, try to bring back the chicken coops, think that was on the news last year, they were talking about it. But so that's gonna be a good class for them to physically be able to build different structures. And the other one that is the advanced construction material processing, that's more of a kind of a way for them to like restore or do like a piece of furniture and then do a repurpose project where they can take something that wasn't like necessarily meant as that, turn it into whatever they come up with, and then they're gonna do like a nicer piece of furniture. So at least that's the idea. We'll see how far we can get in 9 weeks.
Yeah, and then other additional classes that we added. So since I've been here, we've added 3 business classes. 2 of those are in marketing. So one of those is social media marketing. That's a big trend in business, right? And interacting with your customers through social media. And so having students create social media posts and kind of understand the different platforms and how they work and how businesses would use them. And then the other one is sports and entertainment marketing. As you guys know, our kids have a lot of interest in sports, and all kids have entertainment interests. So again, those build off of intro to business, right? And so what I've seen, and I think Jody would agree, is in intro to business, kids tend to gravitate towards those marketing units. And so having those 2 courses where they can further explore marketing in a more direct or a more appealing way to them, right, than just an overview of marketing. And then the 3rd course there is leadership, which we've had, I don't know, 15, 20 students per year take that course. And it's not just geared around business leadership, but leadership skills and how you can translate those things into a job, but also how students would interact throughout their day, whether that's in a classroom or athletics or whatever they do, right? So how do you manage group settings and things like that? So trying to provide students ways where business appeals to them and they can kind of see their interest in a business setting.
The last thing there, we added, JJ's adding skills USA for CTSO is strength. As being Sweden.
Yes.
Yes.
Asking.
Yeah, so some challenges, JJ, you kind of touched on it, if you want to address your challenges right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a new space and then new classes and just trying to do all of that as a school. As it started, that was a challenge. Made it through. And that was getting them to be able to do the welding projects and creative projects. That was big. So that would be one of the things that I would wonder is, that's the space I'm at now. It's like where am I going to be? When I hear that this school is getting torn down, that's getting torn down. So I just am curious where that's going to lead to for a shop space. Be one of my big things.
Yeah, we do get Perkins funding, but the way that our consortium works is it's on a 3-year cycle. So every 3 years, we will get $7,000 to spend on most of the time it's on modernized equipment, modernized technology. So it has to meet certain criteria in order for us to spend the funding on it. And then we do every year get the regional planning partnership funding, which is about $2,400. Prior to last year, it all had to be spent on professional development. Last year, they opened that up a little bit where we can provide or purchase supplemental curriculum or equipment. Starting next school year, industry recognized credentials becomes part of the school report card. So finding a way to implement that into our program, because of the list of approved credentials that you look at on the Iowa Department of Ed website, it's all in the CTE area. So how do we incorporate that into our current programs? And then currently we have a lack of student interest in the information solutions pathway, and we haven't investigated yet why. But even when you look on Zello and you look at career interests for our different students, we don't have a lot of students that are interested in that pathway. So just finding a way to get them more interested in, so we grow that strength, because the jobs are there, the demand is there. So how do we get our students interested in that. So those are our current challenges. So needs, JJ's touched on this. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the questions I have is, you know, what's the future look like? Like, I know where I want to go with the program. Like, I would like to have courses and things like that. But that requires, you know, space, so, and then it's just other kind of pieces of equipment that are gonna start rolling in, so, just takes time. I'm trying to be patient. So, I mean, those are the only things that I really have to wonder about is what's like 3 years down the road looks like, so. And then also as far as with the intro to welding class, right now it's just focused on using arc welders. And I would like to, you know, eventually be able to get students into doing MIG welding, kind of get into that, and then we can start leaning more towards like dual credit classes like they do at Kirkwood. Instead of going to the regional center, I would be able to do that kind of coursework in-house. So.
Yeah, and then finding funding for those industry recognized credentials, they aren't free, right? It's nice for them to require something that's not free. So finding a way to find funding, because asking every family, every student to pay for that, I don't know if that's realistic, because they're on average about $45 for an exam. So there's a big range, but about an average of $45 per exam. And then how do we incorporate that middle school CTE that is a requirement of our programs? So, yeah. So the future of CTE, kind of our vision, JJ's vision is to, y'all won't speak for yourself.
I would like to eventually get to a kind of like a residential construction course where we can get in contact with some of the contractors in the area and be able to take kids to physically work on houses and different projects. And then also the more advanced welding course, that would be another one. So those are two that I would like to have down the road. So it's.
And then growing our work-based learning. So how do we grow that area? Bree is our only apprentice, and we had another student that was interested, did a few hours, and then that was it. It was going to be too much of a time commitment to finish out the apprenticeship. So how do we incorporate more internships, registered apprenticeships, so seeing that being pushed the next several years, and then adding a human services strand. We look at and compare our school district to other schools our size. We have fewer CTE offerings, and so how can we bring back the human services strand, because it's in high demand as well. And then again, that middle school CTE course, how can we combine the careers class that's being offered this year with a more of a CTE course as well. So that's our vision for the future of CTE here at Solon. So if you have any questions for us?
I'm sure there's questions.
How many do you have right now, JJ, in your kind of sections, and is it at capacity or?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I've tried to cap it kind of at 12 just because of equipment and things like that. And then also, you know, you get into some of these intro courses, you don't want 17 kids throwing power tools around. So kind of have it as a little bit smaller size. Now, as far as like the welding, I think there's 4 or 5 sections of it. So numbers wise, they've been pretty good about kind of hitting that 12 marker. I know that there was probably first quarter, there was like 12 kids signed up, and I think like 4 seniors dove out of it, which was good because nothing was quite set up yet. So it was nice to have a little bit smaller group for that. But the other classes, they're about 12, I think 14 snuck in there somewhere. So I don't think about that.
Good to pay my fault. That was a good house.
Is there a certain grade level that you have limitations to? You mentioned the intro classes probably.
Like the intro to ACE class, that's open, grades 9 through 12, because that is a required class for them to take the other construction classes. Now, as far as the welding class, I just put sophomores up to
Okay.
the seniors on that. And that, that's something that could change. But when you're looking at a freshman, if they're in there, then they start, I mean, they could run through all my classes in 2 years, pretty easy. Like it's especially before the other classes were added. I had kids that were taking it, like, you gonna offer anything else? And, yeah, give me time. But yeah, I mean, I get a lot of repeat kids. I've got some that I've got third and fourth block this quarter, so it's good. I mean, that's the kids that are taking those courses are the ones that maybe aren't always the model student in the English class, or they're very hands-on, and I have pretty good luck with them. So
How do we, or have we been thinking about taking the results from the PACE assessment and incorporating that into our curriculum adjustments that we have around knowing that this is where, career centered learning is happening?
No, I mean, we're at the very beginning stages of that, and that assessment has been typically for those kids in special ed. That's how it was normed. The students in the special ed. Yeah,
I
right.
thought not all kids take that.
Right, right,
Got it,
and we haven't even launched that quite yet, so.
Okay. I will last question, I promise. You asked about funding, you asked about, what do you need to grow this? There's some popularity in certain strands, not so much in others. I mean, I think there's definitely some solutions that we can put behind that, and I don't know if we know what the dollar figure is that we're looking at. If there's additional grants that we need to unpack and uncover to go after, certainly should explore that, because I know there are additional funding sources out there that we're probably not tapping into.
No, I was just gonna reiterate, I love what you guys are doing. I think, especially when you have that vision, you want to keep rolling with it. I mean, I'm super supportive of that. So anything we can do, or communication you need to get up to the board, I think we're very open to it. So, and again, I think this kind of stuff is super important, right? What's the biggest investment a kid's ever gonna make in their lifetime? It's probably a home. And if you can do basic stuff, and I see just in my profession, kids coming out that maybe school wasn't the most important thing. Well, they're running a business, they're building homes, they've got their own, construction business, or they've got their own niche. I mean, they're super successful with zero debt. And a lot of it started with interest at school. How did this happen? Well, I got a little background, or I get into welding or construction, and then it took off. So yeah, I think what you're doing is great, and hopefully we can certainly help.
that's, I mean, kind of the reason for having or wanting so many offerings is like, I don't want to say I'm training a kid to go be a construction worker. Well, like exposure is a big thing, like just being able to do it. And some of them, like all these kids showed up and started doing the welding, and it was, next thing I know, they're going and buying their own stuff. And they're like, this isn't a special piece of equipment. You can go to Harbor Freight and buy this. You can go buy any of this equipment you're using, but you might want to know how to use it. So that's the whole thing. They're getting exposed to it, and they're doing very well. That's the plus.
Well, nationally, more people are retiring out of those skilled professions now than that company. So anything we can do to, pique kids' interests, anything we can do as a board, obviously we have new buildings being built and all those sort of things, new campuses, and we're gonna have to look strategically as a board where to put these things so they can grow as they become on the street.
So Jody, you mentioned the certification tests, and how much of a barrier are those costs to them? Is it I'm just trying to be strategize if that's a barrier for people actually to complete the class and the coursework, but what does it take to get them to You want to do those things,
Yeah,
I think from my perspective, it's not necessarily the financial barrier, but I don't know that kids see the value in that certification, right? So if the kid and the parent doesn't see the value in that certification, the $45 might not impact a lot of families, right? But I think the value is there to us because it's a requirement for us and we see how that could benefit kids, but the certificate itself doesn't necessarily give the student anything, right? It's not necessarily something employers look at or things like that. So I think building that value into it might eliminate some of the burden, right? Like the $45 or $50. I don't know if that's the issue or if it's just convincing them that, hey, this is meaningful, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, unless it's like JJ,
Yeah.
just like OSHA, right? So that would be a viable one in the industry. I mean, but then when you look at the business area, it's all like ask certifications. I mean, have you heard of ask certifications? No. So I myself don't really know how much businesses really value it. I mean, there's the mouse certification, right? The Microsoft Office specialist. We used to do that. We had students that would qualify for that and take those tests. And get certified, but that was when the state provided the funding for the things, they no longer do that.
I just wonder if that's something maybe the education foundation would, you could ask them about whether that's something they'd be willing to sponsor.
Yeah.
So that may be an area where we can talk to them about that.
That's a good idea.
I think we should loop also back to the apprenticeships
Yeah.
and the internships, because I bet you there are some employers that would fund those
Oh, yeah, for
credentials
sure.
as well. Or encourage, like, show the value of the why behind some of these credentials.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because showing what that value is at the end of the day for them, and some. And every industry is different, right?
Right.
And I work at the university. And when you get 150 applicants for a job, before we even see them anymore. They go through and they go through, these are the things they marked as required. If you don't have that box checked.
Right.
Your application goes out the door, and if there's still too many left, they go down to the desired and they eliminate people that don't have any of the desired ones, and so the certifications. Can be you may not know it, but your application may be going to the circular file just because other people have it and you don't.
Right.
And like that's always, it's hard to, those are the things that are hard to explain to people, which is, they may not explicitly ask for it, but there may be, I don't want to call them bureaucrats, but HR people who basically go through and say, Adam's time is too expensive to have him sort through these, so I'm going to sort through them for him, and I'm going to determine who the qualified candidates are, and I'm going to pass them along, and so.
Right.
If they're interested in those areas, getting them is valuable. We are aware of the space issues and the long-term planning. Do not doubt that they are constantly on our mind, in terms of how we manage these things. And we're still working our way through what happens as things shift around, and so we'll continue on that path. It's interesting you talked about the residential stuff. Davis and I chatted about that. Was it last week? We met on Thursday or Friday to prep for the board meeting. Afterwards, we talked about, this is coming along. Wouldn't it be nice if we could go down this path of doing the residential builds as an option? And what would that look like? And Davis said, well, we'll have to talk about that later. We're just getting the school year started right now. We can't start planning for future years yet. So know that those are areas that we're interested in. I think CTE is very important. I think we want to get a match for what our students are interested in and push it forward. So we do appreciate everything that you guys do to make that a success. The students really enjoy those classes. Drew will try not to give you 14 students in a 12 student section. But sometimes it's what it is what it is. First of all, you build stair stringers in one of your advanced classes.
You pick a kid and I'll.
After a few attempts, mine are done and my stairs are done, but I told Davis, I'm like, can I give him like $500 and just have him deliver these stringers to my house so I don't have to do this again? And he said, no, you cannot do that as the school board president, so.
John Davis.
But there are valuable skills. When you talk about that advanced work, you think about some things are easy, some things are complicated, and but anything else from them?
Well, thank you guys.
I would like to say as number one, as a single mom of five, the certification things. When my kids would come to me and say, I wanna do this, I had a way.
Yeah.
Like, how important is it? I don't know if I can afford that kind of thing, and I know that's not common in Solon, but that. It is a thing that happens to people, so that's really important that we find a way to support that, but also I'm a product of VOTech school. So to me, having something here on our campus is really important because again, as a single mom of five and all my kids didn't have their own cars. So trying to get them to Kirkwood for classes was really difficult for me. And I know that's not really common in Solon, but my kids were not ones that they are hands-on kids, and that would have been more opportunity for my kids if we had things here on this campus. So I really appreciate you guys and everything you do. And it's really important to me to have things available like that here on our campus. So I think those things are really important, and I really appreciate you guys and what you do.
They're important, they're definitely important classes. So my favorite classes were those, they weren't, I don't want to use the word, they weren't taking calculus, but it was like, you learned, and they seemed to be more enjoyable than some of the other classes. Yeah, the funnel language, yeah. So. You guys are welcome to stay the rest of the night with us. You're also welcome to go back to your lives. I don't want you to feel like you're obligated to stay. Sometimes it seems like when people come to visit us, they feel like they have to stay. Not that we don't want you to stay, but we also don't want you to feel like you have to stay because
They're out the door.
This would not be a fun elective.
This is not a fun elected, and the principals also, you should know, after you leave, they hit the door as soon as Davis gives them a nod that it's okay to go. He doesn't think we notice the nod, but all of a sudden we notice the room is empty.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Admin report.
Three kids at home, there's.
Yeah, there's no worse way to.
Principal Holtz.
All right, so I'm here this month to share our SIS literacy data with you. So if you'll go to the next slide for me, Josh. I want to start off with looking at last year's ISS data so that you understand like how we take this, analyze it, and determine next steps in response to instruction. So this is looking at as a building, as far as proficiency in ELA, according to ISS data, we were 74% of our students proficient. I broke that down for you by grade level, so you can see the below, the at, and the above. That's number of students per grade level at the time. So the current data you're looking at, those fifth graders are now with Mike up at the middle school. When we looked at that data, we really wanted to think about, one, is that consistent with what we have in our building information? So our benchmark data, it's pretty consistent with that as well. So then we started thinking about what is it that we need to be doing to get up to at least 80%. So that's a goal that we're looking at for ourselves. You'll advance the slide for me. Thank you. So when we, at the end of the year, really probably towards early spring, we start thinking about as an administrative team in our buildings, what is our plan on a page, what goals are we going to have? And specifically for ELA, the goal that we talked about from a leadership team standpoint, from an admin team standpoint, was for all of our students, 80% of students be proficient or advanced in ELA measured by the ISS testing. So then we start to think about what's our response going to be. So if we're at 74% right now, how are we going to raise that to the 80%? So as we started to look at our data, we were also looking at those that go after us. So how is the middle school performing? And the middle school's performance is significantly higher than what we are at SIS. So I just asked Mike for that information today just to give that to you. So last year's data for them, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, 87% proficient, 91 and 96% proficient, respectively, 6, 7, 8. So the question that we started asking was, what's going on differently at the middle school that's not happening at SIS, and how can we learn from what we already see is working? And the answer to that question was they're doing reading strategy groups, whereas SIS has been working with guided reading groups. And so as we started to think about what would be the benefit for that, there were a few different engagements that we had as an admin team with some Zooms from different people from different resource companies. We were talking about reading strategy groups more. And so we really wanted to start thinking about how would this look if we implemented this at SIS and what would that shift be? So when we think about reading strategy groups versus the guided reading groups that we've been doing, if you wouldn't mind. So guided reading groups are really having kids grouped by ability and then going through a structured learning system during their day. So they might be looking in that 30-minute chunk of time or 20-minute chunk of time. They're looking at ability grouping for students. And most of the time, by the time they've reached 4th grade, they've been with similar students or the same students in those small groups for a bit. And so as we think about shifting to strategy groups, then it allows us to group students by the skills that they're missing versus the ability of like their reading text level. And so this allows us to use the data that we're collecting in order to group our kids more fluidly. And you have exposure to different types of readers and different skills that each of you all need to how can we learn together, even though we might be at different ability groups. So we started thinking about what would we need to implement that for the professional development and thinking about how would we roll that out at SIS. First of all, we want it to be data driven. So looking at our ISS data, but also looking at our end of unit assessments, our benchmarking, cold read running records, and then taking that information to really determine what skills our students needing at any given time in order to keep them moving through their text. We know that we have that job embedded PD available to us through our coaching staff. And then also we can learn from the middle school coaching staff as a resource as well. So then we started thinking about if we roll this out, what other needs do we have? Well, we also like to learn and be able to watch other people. So in addition to be able to watch teachers in the middle school, how can we build up the capacity of our own building to learn from our own staff? So we started to think about our PLC leads. And for 4th grade, that's Sammy McAtee. And for 5th grade, that's Jared Galpin. And so we really started giving them a little bit more information, reading up a little bit more about reading strategy groups, coaching with Jody Idle as well. And then also checking in with the middle school coaching staff, Teresa Berg and help me out, I forgot. Thank you, Julie Smith, to get their insight and their input. And we started some of this stuff, like getting that background information back in the spring, so that we could move forward with that. And then what other resources might we need in order to do that? So when we look at our instruction then, as we shift to reading strategy groups, this instruction allows for each of these things that you're seeing up here, so that we can really differentiate, enrich, or scaffold either way for students within reading. We're starting we have monthly book logs that we can track and help with accountability for students so that they are reading during the independent reading time. Increased collaboration. This is not just a general education, this is also special education learning for all of us, as well as support with interventionists as well. And then streamlining our data collection. So the big piece that we really wanted to think through was, how are we collecting our data? In the past, at SIS, we have been giving running records every 2 weeks or so to kids if they weren't in what we call an LLI group. So that is our readers that have the most struggle. They were getting a running record every week. Other students were getting one every other week. And then we were grouping and things like that with our guided reading using that data. In this regard, then, if we're not going to be doing a running record on kids every 2 weeks, what data are we going to have and how are we going to adjust instruction based off of that data? So then we created a data sheet that I'll show you here in just a second so that we have that tracking progress going through to ensure kids are getting what they need for adequate exposure, instruction, and practice of skills. The other piece to this instructional component is knowing that our core curricular resource, it allows us that opportunity to build upon that core instruction in that differentiated group that we have going. In the past, when we've done the guided reading groups, we've had our core instruction. Kids have been set to work independently, to read independently and put that into practice. But our guided reading groups haven't necessarily focused on the same topic or skill that our core component has. So this is allowing it to all really tie together and mesh together well, to not be pulling kids in several different directions at one time. So hopefully more focused, but also more skill specific instruction. So then, as we've looked at our professional learning, these are the pieces that we put into place in order to allow this to happen. So the biggest and I think the best piece of this professional learning has been our reading strategy groups professional development. It was a full day. It was over Zoom, provided by Mossflower. And we were able to, thankfully, with the help of our subs, we got subs for all of our general ed classroom teachers. Our special ed teachers reworked their schedule so that if they didn't have groups that day, they were able to still meet their students' needs and be part of that coaching and learning together for a full day. That allowed us to provide some update on where our PLC coaches were, or our PLC leads were as far as implementation, and then also learning and dive deeper for what does the structure of your reading strategy group look like, and how do we keep going with that. We have our job embedded coaching, and so Jess Hotek is our instructional coach in the building. She is there to help provide that additional support. She's been coaching and learning alongside our PLC leads. And then those individuals have also been able to take that back and provide a place for us to learn from within our building, in addition to learning from the middle school. Jody Idle, who's our AA literacy consultant, has also been in the building. She participated in our professional development that was provided by Mossflower as well. And it has also been able to help us as we've developed our data sheets to think about how do we adjust now that we don't have our running records. The other benefit and the professional learning that we're continuing to do is that alignment of our standards from our core unit to the strategy groups and the unit instruction, again, to mesh that all together. And then again, that collaboration with the local coaches and the literacy team there. So getting them to come over to our building, give us feedback on what they're seeing. And then as they get into their reading units, we'll be able to go over and see how they're using that in their classroom too, to learn from them things that we may not be doing yet. So that's a professional learning that we have going on. Resources that we're providing teachers for this, we were able to purchase the Reading Strategy 2.0 Teacher's Guide and Companion Charts book. And this just really gives teachers if this is the skill that a student is missing, here are the lessons that will help support that instruction within your guided reading group. So the book has that in a more progressive manner. So here's the more simplistic version of giving a kid that skill to a more complex version of that skill, depending on where a kid may be on that spectrum. And so that's just a real quick, easy resource to make this even more friendly, I guess, for the teachers to be able to implement. And then that strategy course, with everybody being there, collaboration with middle school staff, the group sheets, as well as organization of materials, and then artifacts for toolkits. And that's a future PD that we'll talk about here in just a second. And so looking at our data, I want to share this with you. So as we review data, each of those things that you see on the screen there are part of our data review. So just pass it around the table. So you have one sheet coming from 4th grade and one sheet coming from 5th grade. Names have been redacted from it so that it's private still, but just to give you a sample of what that data sheet looks like so that you can see how we're using that in a data review mindset. They're two different ones, yeah. So if you look at the one, first of all, that has McAfee up in the right-hand corner of it. At the start of each unit, teachers get a new data sheet so that it's aligned to the unit and the priority standards that are being focused on in that unit of instruction. And then it has a place for them to put in their fall benchmark. And then we'll add ISASP on here as it comes into the spring component as well. For them to think about, okay, if this is where their benchmark was, what did that need for instruction look like? So they analyze that benchmark assessment, which we do beginning, middle, and end of the year. And then the next box down is what are the priority standards for this particular unit? And so you see the 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. And then we had the teachers go in and tell us, okay, we do what we call a pre-assessment. So we refer to that sometimes as our on-demand. So at the beginning of a unit, we give an assessment to see what kids know, and then we keep that data, and then we can think about, okay, where's the kid at? What instruction do they need? What are they missing? And then we did, in this case, 2 formatives to follow up on each of those different priority standards, and then we'll give the post-assessment. So you can see the post-assessment hasn't been given for this one yet, but you can see For this kid in particular, if you're looking at either the theme summary or the character traits, you can see the growth that is being made there. The AP stands for approaching proficiency and would be a level 3. So you see he's gone from a 2 to a 3, from the pre to the formative assessment. And then same thing, 2 and then 3 on the character traits piece. And then if you look down below, the bottom half of the front sheet is for them to think about if they're conferring with a student one-on-one. So I pull a student one-on-one and I'm talking with them about any particular piece. So you can see where Sammy's highlighted like character traits on 10-7, and that's what they did. They'd done character traits before and she started, he did great. So now she moved on to the theme summary component of that. On the back then is where she's met the same kid, in addition to the conferring one-on-one, is meeting in a small group based off of skill specific strategies. And in this case, the first 2 skill groups were character trait. And then she's taking note of what was the specific instructional need and point made. And then also if there were any, what we call artifacts left with that student. So if you were meeting with me in a group and we were talking about character traits and we used a specific anchor chart, let's say, to work through that, then she would leave them with a sticky note or a smaller version of that anchor chart to take back to their independent work time, so that they have a visual reminder of that conversation and what they learned. So that's what our data sheet looks like for this unit. And then 5th grade is very similar. You can see the one there that says Delphin at the top. They only had 1 priority standard for this unit. So, but again, you can kind of see where they're tracking that progress, formative 1 to the formative 2. And then his notes for the conferring one-on-one. And then on the back, the number of times they've met in a small group. And this student may have met with 2 kids in one group and different kids in the 3rd and 4th time they met as a group. It just depends on the need. So using these data sheets as a way to come back around to it and say, what progress have we made? And then when it comes time for reporting, we see all of that in one snapshot of where a kid is at. So then when we look at, in the end, how are we going to determine whether we're successful in our literacy efforts? We're looking for that 80% proficiency on ISASC. We're looking for all students to receive skill-specific literacy instruction, whether that's enrichment or scaffolding to close a gap. As well as all teachers build in their capacity for small group instruction. I think one of the biggest celebrations in this is when we first started using the resource that we use for our core reading instruction, strategy groups was always the vision, but teachers weren't ready for that yet. We weren't familiar enough with our standards and the intricacies of those to really feel confident and comfortable in doing that. And in the 5 years that SIS has been open, teachers' readiness is now there. And they are just eager and excited to implement this work. I have not seen them in my 4 years here. I have not seen them more excited to do something than this. And then also just building their confidence to respond instructionally to those individual student needs. So as they analyze that group for that converting piece, like what does that look like and what does that mean for a kid? It's really opened a lot of vulnerable conversations and learning from one another, which is really awesome to see too. So for fun and just a little bit of background for you, at the beginning of the year, as a staff, we watched a video about a team that was trying to get to the summit of Mount Everest, and there were certain campsites along the way. But as a team, they had one goal in mind. They had a team member who was blind trying to climb Mount Everest. And so the goal was for this one individual to reach the summit of Mount Everest. We watched that video and then we said to ourselves, how does this apply to us at SIS? And what is our one goal? What's the one thing? We're all here as a team, but if we're all going to make it to the top, what does that look like and how do we get there? So we broke down the steps to reach our 80% proficiency that we have on our plan on page into various campsites along the way. And then one of our amazing staff members, Shauna Schmidt, painted our mountain for us. And we have tracked our campsites along the way so that when we reach the top of our summit, we will be at that 80% proficiency when we take our ISS testing. So we're tracking that. This is in our teacher's lounge so you can see it, and we're trying to have a little fun along the way. So that the first image is our data sheet that was presented and prepared. And you see Jared and Sammy, who are PLC leads, They were trekking up the mountain. Jared's taking a drink out of his water, just to clarify for everyone. And then after our full day PD together as a staff, we were all looking up the mountain. So you can see that as our third campsite. So we have just all of our points along the way as a staff. We determined what are those 9 different campsites to get us to that summit. And then in the end, our current progress. So what have we accomplished so far? Oh, my bad. I forgot about our feedback. So I asked teachers, and I'll just let you read that for a second on their feedback so far. And that's just to our teachers that have shared that, but we're all seeing that same impact. Progress so far this year, we've come all the way down to bullet point number 5 there so far with that October 14th. I've been in classrooms the last couple weeks since that PD, I guess, couple days since that PD, really seeing how we're implementing those strategy groups and the converting piece, and just monitoring that we're using all of those components and taking those notes along the way. Teachers have also were assigned to sign up for a mini coaching cycle with our building instructional coach to continue to practice and build on what we've already had. In our January PD time, we'll be talking more about artifact toolkit development, and then our February PD time will wait to see where we're at there to see what we need next following. So that's SIS, literacy, SIS.
Thank you. Questions?
A lot. It is. That's exciting.
Bobby for taking a look at the data and making adjustments so that make your phone. I love it.
Well, I think too, you got everybody kind of bought in on it, which is really cool. So, I mean, I think it's gonna be exciting to see the data. You know, obviously everybody's going to know about it, and you got buy-in from everybody, so.
Yeah. That's the super exciting part.
When is the topic though? When is the assessment?
Usually in April.
April.
Yeah, we don't get the data till what, June?
They're getting better, they're getting faster, they're getting faster.
Yeah.
Nope, getting faster.
And I know it sounds weird, but like, we have this April date. How do we know if we're like, we are progressing, so we wait and we haven't lost a whole year?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, like,
Yeah.
if our strategies are bad, and I don't think they
Right,
are,
right.
but I mean, just.
I completely get your question. So we are going to still be doing our middle of the year benchmarking. So we'll still do that. And so far, our benchmarking has been pretty spot on with where we've been at ISAST as well. So I think that'll give us a gauge at where we're at. And that comes in the early part of February. So we'll have that, but also we reserve that right. Like at any point in time, we need to give a kid a running record, and we still will be doing that if we feel like we need more information on a kid to identify their needs and their skills. So I think that'll give us a good measure come February.
Thank you.
Other questions? It's a lot to be digest. I'll have
Yeah.
to stop by and see the mural in the.
Yeah,
So-
good. Real awesome.
Well, we've talked about this before. I mean, you're kind of like, lean on you and Josh and everybody. You know, like that particular test, how much do we want to base a lot of what we do off of that? I mean, that's the hard part, right?
It's given one
The
time on
ISAPs.
one day.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I like all the other stuff that's kind of wrapped up into that. That's got more credence to me as far as where we at, where we gone. So I mean, I'm excited to see those as they progress.
That's where we've seen, obviously more value in like the map test where we're giving it multiple times a year. Cassie and Davis and I talked about, you know, that giving something a little more valuable 3 times a year that we can just get some dipsticks.
Yeah,
You
it
get
allows
them.
you to intervene sooner.
Check our temperature, so to speak, right?
As long as the data you can predict to
Right.
the thing that's going to matter at the end, because the ISAC test, it's what we are all
So everybody sees it when it
systematically,
goes out. Yeah.
for better or for worse. Now, we can try to change that, which that's another.
It's a whole nother hill.
Don't worry that we're trying to mark up that other tree. I'm trying to get a conversation with Amy Nielsen if she can hear my text messages and emails. So we've done that,
Yeah.
so we need to, we actually need to advocate on behalf of all school districts in Iowa to change Iowa's educational assessment system.
Well, I do appreciate from the board, that we had a problem. We all did that, we said, we need your help. And we need to change and we look at it in a different process and we could have pretended like there was a problem and we go down the same path. And I appreciate that we looked at our own resources within, we looked at resources without. But this, outside of where we are and I appreciate everybody sort of, rallying the troops, so to speak, and I don't want to speak for the whole board, but I'm very appreciative that the strides we're making towards changing something we didn't care for. And so I think that's super important. Yeah, thank you very much.
Board committee reports. Strategic plan, I don't think you guys have anything this month.
Other than I'm trying to get a hold of Amy Wilson.
Yeah.
To try to ensure that it kind of start to explore, because one of the, you and I went through a lot of the data around all of the different buildings and all of the assessments and the data points that we're doing aren't very cohesive and allow us to really understand the story that is telling across the different facets. And I think Iowa makes it extremely hard for us to do that with some of the policies they have in place. So I think there's a larger strategic play here that we could potentially do at trying to reinforce that. I actually reached out to my counterpart at Pearson to try to understand if they've had any headway, Department of Education, and they have not either. And so I think form a coalition pretty easily. Great trust right here.
Some of us were here when one standard test disappeared and then we were gonna head down the path and then all of a sudden in the end, Iowa intervened with some tests that hadn't been validated or tested. And, I think that's terrible. Because there are other tests out there that are validated, there are, so.
Right, like the FAST assessment is an example, we're all forced to do it, but yet you don't see us using the data because we don't really find value in the data that we see.
Right.
So why are we forced to use it? That is an example of something we need to consider.
For sure.
Capital projects, two things on there, Lakeview project update.
Yeah, just, as we look at Lakeview, we look at hiring a contract manager at risk. So that we have boots on the ground as far as people who actually build on the design phase. We put out a notice of intent, drew a lot of interest. Brian and I have probably met with 6 different ones, and we've got more coming that just want to introduce themselves and let them know that they'll be submitting what we just posted at the beginning of the week, a request for qualifications. So that request is, the deadline is the 29th of this month. And then we'll actually bring a selection to the board to interview.
Is it gonna go through the building committee first or not at all? Just bring it to everybody?
No, the building committee will look at, we anticipate getting 10 to 15.
Yes.
Yeah, and so we'll probably want the building committee to look through the criteria because there's an already preset criteria as far as a point system, a scoring system, and have the committee maybe narrow that down to 3, 4, 5, however many the board chooses to interview, and then we'll bring those to the board. Yeah,
I think we have 3 for the manager not at risk.
I think 3 is a good number, but
Okay.
I would.
We're gonna put the 4 or 5.
Right, if you're
Whatever
like,
size.
I don't want to
sure.
exclude, you know what I mean, I think that's reasonable, but.
Do you guys know how many, on another standard one that's done it, let's say it was a Benton that had something
Yeah.
similar, how many did they have as far as interest when they opened that door? for some of the qualifications, were they getting about 10 to 15 or?
When we met with Larson's at the start of this. The three that they said that they hadn't been a part of up to that point were between 10 to 15. But he thinks it's only going to be more
Yeah.
as this
Get more
starts more comfortable and it starts being out.
And remind me, just, is this lowest bid, is it's?
No.
Not necessarily.
This is just selection.
Okay.
And that's why we
I thought
put
that was
together
the case, but
criteria,
I
and this is
wanted-
just selection.
Okay.
And remember the big difference between the CMA, which we started with in the 15 project, to the CMR is we held all the contracts with the CMA. In this one, the CMR will hold all the contracts and going into it has a set price.
Gotcha.
If it goes over, it's all on them. They eat it. So.
Other than we've gotten, this is 28D agreement. Actually, Davis,
Here, you wanna give it a line?
Davis had asked for feedback and
That's just some.
we've got
compiled.
only did into a nice one-page notes document you guys all should have amongst your things. And then there's a couple of documents. There's the original document, what we think our current version of the 20 agreement is, and then the city suggested changes. So based on the city suggested changes, I think the goal is to just quickly talk through the discussion points, where areas that were raised, concerns by board members. The best copy of it reads so she doesn't feel left out.
You have control ones? Visual one?
No,
So JJ missed the Davis is not, because you notice how quickly that room emptied out after the nod. It's like,
His kids are still at home.
Well, we're happy to have you stay.
This is good.
We just don't really get people that stay, so it's just not an experience for us. So I guess kind of walk down through it. Davis, you kind of want to walk us down from the top of the list. I'm talking, because I think it's sequential.
is it?
Yeah, I think it's sequential to the document itself, for the most part. Or I can walk us through
Yeah.
it as well, so, I think the first point on it is, the city's proposed version completely changes the 2080 agreement governance, setup, and so they propose basically kind of eliminating the committee unless we decide to call one for a particular reason. Like the governance would just basically revert back to the board and the city council without a separate governing body for that. I think we all acknowledge that the current version isn't working because the 2080 committee has not met in a long time, and changes are going on down there that should go through the 2080 committee that are not going through it. So what are our general thoughts on kind of having the city and the school duke it out on everything versus having a 2080 agreement committee that would go through it today? We've got to kind of go push, we have to put a counter proposal back to them. And so I think
We're gonna probably have to, when you say just a couple of us on a committee, that would be easier than trying to get everybody all together.
yeah, and I think really, in my mind, it really comes down to the question about whether or not you have a small group, the city's really pushing the small committee meeting, which is really driven by Cammie and Davis, and then other people get pulled in. But it doesn't really generally involve any of the elected representatives of the board or the city council. And so I think the question for me really is, are we comfortable with that sort of arrangement where, or what extent do we want to have some say on this, where it's supposed to be a joint, the original ideas was kind of a joint governance where things would go to the 2080 committee, and then they would go up to the city council and the school board for approval afterwards, if necessary. And so what are our thoughts on that general management style? Do we have a particular preference for how we manage the 2080 agreement?
In general, that's how we operate. We have committees that go through the process so that we all are going through the process. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't do that, but that's how we run it.
everybody's aware of what's going on.
Right, for
what
sure.
it would be.
Right.
But just, you know, let's sit there and go through it.
Right, now all 5 board members need to be there for whoever's on that committee goes through it. Davis, you and Cammy you kind of just start this off. How is it going now? I mean, I guess.
It's not as
Okay.
far as 28E. Now, previous outside the 28E, Cammy and I and Casey and the city rec director and Brian and Scott for the city, we had about 4 or 5 meetings to where we're just discussing our indoor facility, their needs and their wants maybe for a indoor facility, and just the whole question, does it make sense to combine forces, share this, that? So that was the only outside of board that we discussed as far as exploration of any things that we could do jointly. So, but nothing to really do with the 2080.
I think the one thing to note on the 2080 is maybe one of the reluctance for the city to engage in it, is that by law, the 2080 committee is a formal body. It has to post agendas and 24-hour notice and whatnot, so, that maybe, I don't think that's one of the meetings I don't want to deal with, it's a headache. It's like when we have SIAC, right, SIAC selection, it's an agenda, we give 24-hour notice and, because it's one of those groups that this legislature has said has to follow the open meetings law, so. I think my biggest thing is we want something that works, and with, the current process isn't working. These proposed changes by putting the current rules should not have come to us in this way. They should have gone to the 2080 committee and then been discussed there and then put out to us. Instead, it was city proposes changes, sends them to us, and we're not, so we're not making any effort to make the 2080 process as it's defined work. Even though going all the way back to Dick Schwab, every year we appoint 2 members to the 2080 committee, and it would never meet. And so.
I just think what's happening now isn't working.
Yeah.
And so, and to me, this process, them coming up with what they want, and then it comes here, and then we all have to talk about it here, and then it goes back there. That's a pretty big waste of time. And I think if there was a committee like they're supposed to be, and they did meet regularly, that they can come to an agreement, come to something there that makes sense for everyone. Instead of it being an us against them, it would be a group working together, and that makes a lot more sense to me.
I kind of like the idea of the 2-2 and that person that's an outsider from, it doesn't know the school board or the city council. Like that. To me, that made sense. It's just, it just never, it never met, right? So I think it could work, so.
Well, and I think it has some advantages because, our board meetings and their board meetings, you could, ours, big times and agendas, they can meet more frequently. Where it's a little bit more difficult for entire boards to meet more frequently over discussions. Now, maybe that we just meet once a year, we don't have issues but I think.
Well, the hope would be it definitely needs reworked, so we have a group or committee, or even us as a, here's what we want to see done, or here's what we kind of want to bring to the table. Get some of this knocked off. It shouldn't be that big of a deal if we can get it updated, and it's fair for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's, again, when we met with the city, there's things in there that, how long have we been on the board? I never saw any of some of the things that were brought up in concessions. So, just probably getting up to speed on everything and actually what's actually in the actual agreement, not handshake agreements outside of it.
Right. Yeah. Next up on the list is they want to reduce the city proposes reducing the use of parking for school purposes. Specifically, they want the school to ensure students and buses do not park there. And we all acknowledge that there's parking limitations down at SRNA. Are we comfortable making Casey the parking police and tracking, which students are who and forcing them not to park there? To me, it's a little bit unreasonable. The agreement as it's currently written gives both sides the use of the parking spaces without restriction by the other. And they want to push on us. Certain uses that we can't now make in that parking space related to our use of the facility. So that's a little bit bothersome to me, particularly as the company. The bus change came without notification to us until we found it. So I drove by one morning and saw a sign there, and I called Davis and I said, "Did you know there's a sign that says no bus parking at SRNA?" Communication just wasn't there about the concern, and again, these are things that should be dealt with in the 28E committee. But what are our general thoughts in response to those? Casey, I know you probably have some thoughts or concerns on.
Yeah, I mean, we've worked pretty good together, whether Scott lets me know or, we've talked a couple of years about our night games when there's rec stuff going on. Like, we try to get the buses and the bus drivers get frustrated with me, but I try to send them over to Lakeview. Which that parking lot's full, because a lot of times we have softball and baseball going on, and that parking lot's much smaller the way it is. But we've sent the nighttime games over. If it's a daytime game, I've communicated with like Brody, like, hey, there's nobody in this parking lot. This bus, to me, it's a public parking lot. If it's full for rec stuff, I understand, like, try to save as many spots as you can. Bus drivers take up 3 spots so they can easily go park somewhere else. Day games, it hasn't been an issue if they park there. The whole parking lot's wide open. Usually it's fine. No one really complains that the bus is in there. Now with this new sign, does that mean now that the day games, they gotta go park over at Lakeview too? That's how I see that communication going. But in the past few years now, there's some bus drivers that get there, they park that bus and they disappear, and I can't find them, and I don't wanna call them over the loudspeaker and call them up to their bus. So if I miss them, sometimes they're there, but it doesn't happen very often throughout the summer. As far as our kids, that's a struggle for me to tell them, hey, you gotta park up at the middle school, carry all your bags down and everything down, hit, and then jump on a bus and leave. Is it doable? Sure, but they're gonna have to park at the middle school because the Lakeview, there's just not enough room over there for them. So that's a trek for them to come down with all their stuff. Cause they don't just jump on a bus and go to a game like they do for other activities. They always hit first or do something before it.
So
You shouldn't have kids walking that far with all their stuff. You wouldn't expect anybody else to, like, for basketball games, you wouldn't expect them to park at the middle school and walk over to the high school. It doesn't make any sense.
We do for practices, for football, and then kids don't park behind the school, they all park, you're supposed to park in the middle school. For, it's like before, I'm just thinking, like, what I'm familiar with anywhere else, And sometimes, right, like as school starting, like they're not supposed to ever park in that high school parking lot. And then schools start, you know what I mean, we're speaking, but, I remember watching some of the sophomores this year, I'm like, hey, what are you doing parking here? You need to be at the middle school, so teachers and coaches have places to park. And so,
To me, some of this, it's a hard stance on a hard no,
Right.
especially like he said in the summer, or hey, we're gonna swing in there and go grab the kids, drop them off, they can hit. There's nobody here.
Right.
Then we'll pull them out and, take off and go wherever the competition is. I think some of that needs to be discussed on one-off basis. If it's one of those, like, what was the big contention with last term then, right? When you had 4 or 5 different things going on down there. It wasn't even our event, but we can coordinate that. That's not a one-off deal.
That's kind of where I fall, is like, I'm fine working with them on it. I'm a little bit not in favor of having a hard language in there. It's absolutely not. And I don't feel like that's a concession I want to make, given that, they don't have.
So one way to combat this is making sure that the language that we put in the proposal is the exact problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
Which is the evening. Or when there is a heavy traffic kid, like a heavy recreational event that is happening. Then that's the exception that we want to make. So let's just make a policy around that and then leave everything else to
Coordination.
the verbal or gentleman's handshake kind of thing.
Well, we even talked to the board meeting about having a shared calendar.
Yeah, and that's in there, and I think, you know, next thing.
That was good too, you know, if everybody knows everything's gonna be down there.
Yeah, and Brody and I, like I said, we communicate, like, we're usually on the same page.
Right.
It's really just, like, he hasn't complained about anything, like cross-country, turn in the paperwork, they knew when our cross-country meets were, and that's all been communicated well in advance. Baseball, I mean, you just, well, bet that we're gonna have a 5 o'clock game every night of the week.
I think that coordination, that's, kind of, the coordination is kind of the next one, they do propose changing it from the rec commission, which I think they eliminated, which was. The city eliminated, which was supposed to handle that in the past, and now it's just the rec director would be handling the coordination. But they specifically call out special coordination for cross-country, and track and field, which surprised me a little bit, because track and field occurs in our facility, not down at SRNA. I realize that there's a lot of parking that gets taken up down at SRNA when we host a home track meet, because there's 10 bazillion people that show up.
Well, it's multiple schools.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And so I did find it odd that they wanted us to coordinate our scheduling of track meets with them, but, you know. To me, it's one of those things where if we're doing a shared calendar, I don't know why we need special, we should coordinate on everything. I don't know why we call specific sport events out. It's like, we're gonna coordinate. And it should be both ways. It's not just about what the school's got scheduled, but if we've got a track meet that's gonna have parking, then maybe they don't want to schedule something else down there that's gonna, where we know that traffic is gonna be a problem. So to me, I think that coordination needs to be a two-way street and not calling out our specific events. So I would propose to kind of reject that language and just say, yeah, we're gonna coordinate, but we're not gonna call out specific events for coordinating. I'm gonna just coordinate on coordinate.
About that competition area, that's one.
Yeah, so the competition area, we gave up access, we gave up our full control of that in 2013, which we may now regret. But one of the things they wanted is they want to restrict our priority access to it only during the school year. I don't know if we care about that, because I don't know how much we use it during the summer. But the other side of it is that, you know, conversely, you know, we actually probably have more needs of that space for longer periods of time than what we currently have priority access for. I know that there are rules that if they don't have a game, we can give them notice and get it. But I think, you know, as we look towards things like middle school soccer, which is wildlife increases, is likely to be something that happens in the future. You know, we probably have needs for longer than 3:30 to 5 in the afternoon if we're gonna have to host middle school soccer games down there. So.
Will that be in the spring, middle school soccer, for sure?
So I think we need to ask for a larger window of priority time on that, as part of our negotiations back with them. Casey, any thoughts?
Yeah, just the, and soccer in general, because if the middle school soccer thing goes down there, we went to varsity soccer doubleheaders, which is awesome because you're only needing workers once instead of twice, which your workers are getting harder and harder to find. But if I had 2 competition fields, I could play JV at home on the same night down there, start earlier. I mean, I still don't think we're needing it much past 6, and that's only happens a handful of times. But, you know, that's something that I would hope that, you know, Brody and I can talk about, because that schedule, we're ready, you know, I'd be ready now, so I know he's not ready for his spring schedule now. But just say, hey, on these 4 dates, can I have this thing till like 6:30?
Yeah.
You know, and their spring's not as busy as their fall down there. They moved all those soccer fields kind of up by SRNA 3 and 4. So that's freed up that field quite a bit. But those are just things that facility crunch wise that we have that moving forward would make our life a lot easier for sure.
So if we have priority access to 6 or 6:30, that would be.
And one thing to keep in mind, if we, by how this is worded, and it's not worded very clearly on what the competition area would include, but that falls on the maintenance of the school. You start playing soccer in the spring on a grass field, maintenance is gonna go through the roof as far as keeping the sod in place. I mean, Dan knows what it's like to play on a grass football field. There's gonna be a lot more expense on fertilizer, rolling it. All those things that you need to do to a grass field, it's gonna get a lot more use than it currently does.
Well,
And then who mows what down there? That was the other part of it
yeah,
for me.
there's a conflict in the agreement right now between who's supposed to mow the soccer field and.
Well, yeah, and I'm not talking just soccer field, it's like you got that whole, I basically said you draw a line from the concession stand to the north along that path. Everything to the east of that, the way I read the agreement, the way they want it, would be maintained by the school. All the mowing, trimming, weed eating, weed control, all that would be done by the school. That's 5-6 hours a week for one guy. You know, that adds to what we have right now.
Well, not to mention all the stuff that we don't have control over down there.
Correct.
They got the cross stuff down there, they got all the other rec league stuff down there, and that's a good point.
I mean, it's just another expense that the district's gonna have to incur.
Next bullet.
Yep. Next item on the list is. Agreement currently gives unrestricted, so from the original agreement, it gives unrestricted access to the baseball field when it's not being used by the school of the city. This is not the current practice. We've long maintained kind of full control over that space, and I'd be probably like the agreement to be updated. There's a lot of expense in there. If the city starts going in and using it for rec league games, it's gonna be a lot more expenses that we have to incur to keep that maintained, so.
That one's not just rec league, like there's money to be made on that field, the
Yeah.
calls I get all the time from
Yeah.
people that wanna. Like high school
Yeah.
tournaments and things, they use all the local fields, they always want our field.
Yeah.
But there's just. The damage that's gonna be done to it's not worth. The money that's gonna come with it.
Yeah, so I think we just want to get to reflect kind of current practice and. Yes, so. So we just want to try to make that adjustment. City wants to discuss light, apparently we don't pay for the lights at the varsity field right now. It's apparently wired up so that it goes under their meter.
Well, I read it as there's 2 meters there, but they're paying the meter. That's how I read what was in what Davis sent this afternoon or this morning. But we don't pay.
We don't pay it.
Yeah, so they want to discuss that because currently they're assuming the cost. And I think it's probably fair for us to pick up the cost for using the lights, so.
Yeah, especially if we want restricted use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's fine.
So would the lighting of the concession stand be included in all that as well?
Is that on the same
I-
year?
No, I think that was on separate.
Okay.
The way I read it, the concession stand would be separate.
Next one's. The way they apparently got laid out in the proposal is the future development gives city veto power and changes since. The competition area, but the rest of the park is only. The city has full control over what happens. Under the current agreement, the 2080 committee would in theory review everything that goes on down at SRNA, and so basically they want to. Have city veto power over every, over this competition area, but this school basically has no say on what happens in the area immediately surrounding the competition area. I think that's probably, if we push back on that from the 2080 or we want everything fall through the committee, I think that's the easiest way to solve it is everything stays the way it is in terms of.
I don't like when one entity has. Especially when it's not us.
Yeah. I think they probably feel the same way, which is why they want veto power and us to have no say, so.
Negotiating my way.
Charging with admission, Casey, you want to talk a little bit about this, because the agreement from the beginning was kind of, we wouldn't charge. Broadly to go in, for cross country, we've always kind of charged by car. The agreement pushes back on that, and there's just no good way to charge for cross country. And we also have access issues like even for baseball, it's hard to get, particularly now there's a new sidewalk there where people can just walk around very easily and not pay.
Yeah, so really, the admission. At baseball is kind of what it is, like I understand, you have 100 games, you're not charging at the gate every time, so we get what we get, which is maybe half of what we should get. So basically it comes down to one, maybe two cross-country meets a year. We always have our one. And if we get a state qualifier, which we had last year and this year, it happens twice. So basically, when you run a cross-country meet, by the time you have your starter, your timer, your porta potties, materials, I'm into that meet $2,000 before it starts. You do get some entry fees, but not here enough to start. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I think the state set this precedent, like your admission is gonna be per car, basically the car. We've stayed at $5. Most schools have went to 5 for one person in the car, 10 if you have multiple people in the car, which I think is reasonable. You're trying to cover your costs. With cross country, the only real way to collect that gate is to charge at the entrance. So we have told our people like, hey, if someone's coming to use, the fields or the trail, like we're not trying to ding them, but basically you have about an hour time window where all those spots are gonna fill. So we have 4 parking attendants at the entrance and they're just getting them. So I don't think that's like unreasonable to do that once or twice a year.
And cross country meets are not very close.
No.
Has anybody, has the city said anything about anybody being denied access?
No.
So. Problem.
I think the issue is just that it's in the agreement, it explicitly says we can't do it. And so I think that's I think we want to make sure that.
Just ask.
If we're updating this, we want to reflect what current practice is, so that we're,
And what do we do, like, if it's state baseball, and do we collect anything for state, like if
Districts.
try to do the best you can.
So we try to sell, I push out the communication that buy your tickets in advance.
But you don't set, make
But-
others pay or any of that stuff?
I'll get 2 tables out there up on that top trail.
Yeah.
The half the people that come in behind the outfield fence, like, I don't expect our ticket takers to go chase people back.
Correct.
And that's just, that it hasn't hurt us in postseason, like them giving us games. Cause a lot of times the games that, if we're playing, it probably hurts from some of our home fans. If we're hosting a 1A or 2A sub-state, all those people park at the lot. They buy tickets in advance, which is what the state wants.
Right.
And that works pretty smooth, but yeah, baseball is just really difficult to navigate. I don't expect for cross country, I expect that they let us do it at the entrance. For baseball, I understand that'd be way too much. And there's more going on down there. Typically, when we have a cross country meet, Brody will cancel all of his events that night because they know we're gonna be down there from, 3 o'clock until it's dark. And they've been really good about doing that. Yeah. So no one's really using the park other than if you're going on the trails.
So I think we just want to work to get that updated in the agreement so that it's something that's workable. Consultants, I thought at the June meeting, apparently the city made a big deal out of this, in reviewing the documents, there was a 1-year MOU that says, it said for this 1 year, this is the way it's gonna work. I think they proceeded, for forever. Well, the relationship, and so us running the concession stand continued, but that agreement didn't exist, continue, and even if it was continued by word of mouth, the 2013 agreement specifically said that nothing that is not, whether it's verbal or written, nothing that's not included in this document is part of the agreement. And so the agreement got reset in 2013, and that 20% that they want is not in it. We can talk about what's fair and equitable, but acquiescing to an agreement that's not currently in place is not a good spot to start from. So I think we need to figure out what makes sense from a concession standpoint. I think that's going to require some Casey and Davis negotiation to figure out what's fair and equitable in the long term. I want to push back, having listened to the meeting online, I want to push back because it's not what the current agreement is.
Right, yeah, and the current agreement was not in front of us. Yeah, I mean, if we were legally tied, then we should be, but we aren't, what I mean, but which isn't a surprise, but case currently, where does that money go? Do you go activities?
No, so baseball, theirs goes into the baseball booster account.
Yeah.
And all those funds that are there go right back into the field, essentially.
Gotcha.
And then plus some. So the concessions cost, you know, baseball spends so much money on that field that they need usually some extra money to cover those costs.
So this is a little bit of an aside, but if the concession money, if we continue to have that, how much more do we have to pay activities wise to maintain the field force? Basically concessions take care of all that.
It gets close. I mean, it matters year to year, like how many home games we have and if we get the postseason games, you know, that, and we have all those spreadsheets of how much the concessions brings in and where all that money goes. So it's not like it's hidden, you know, it's
For
just,
sure.
that's what the structure that we've had here for a long time is that baseball and softball concession money, they're responsible to help keep their fields look like that. So otherwise they wouldn't look like that. You know, if our facilities crew had to take care of them.
Do you take care of them at all, Brian?
I pay a portion of the care that we contract out. For it.
Yeah, so we look at it as though, what if we were charged with Brian's crew maintaining that, it would cost us X. We contribute that much to it. If you want above and beyond that, it's on you.
Okay.
And that's how we work that. So we give each softball, baseball, this is how much money, manpower, mowing, all this stuff. It would basically cost our district. So we're gonna give that to you to maintain that field. If you want above that, then it's on you. Yeah.
I think we're kind of in agreement that we gotta figure something out that's workable, it's fair and equitable already. We're just, I would not accept their position of the MOU from 2008 or whatever, 2006, so. The last thing on the list was just cross country, and it's not really addressed in there, but you know, cross country makes, other than we need to coordinate with one, but cross country makes use of that. And one of the concerns is that they have a course through there, and from a coordination standpoint, particularly if things don't have, if changes don't have to run through the 2080 committee. You know, what impacts, you know, I don't know, city council and last, they were talking about moving the sand volleyball courts to an area where it may be directly across the current path of the course, because they want to move them up closer to the Timber Dome Lodge. And so I think I think it's prudent to try to get the fact that we use that for cross-country in the agreement and just have something that says, you know, if there's going to be changes made, we definitely need to coordinate if there's going to be changes made that would impact the course, because the course has been fairly constant since they put that little since Patrick Regal's Eagle project to put that little loop in up past the Timber Dome. So we just want to make sure that we need update to reflect that we have some skin in the game with regard to that. You know, we don't want massive changes that would be made.
And that about changing the location of cross country?
It'd be difficult. I mean, our golf courses, I don't think are gonna allow cross-country meet on the courses.
Well, when you say too, like from a competition standpoint, I know people, they think this course is
Yeah, they
one of the best.
Yeah, and we have a lot of district and just because of the course.
It's set up nice, you got parking.
Well, and
you know.
people can see their kids a lot during the race.
There's a lot of visual places
Right.
to watch.
Well, here's the thing, you go to those meetings, look how many people this draws in this community.
Yeah.
All eating out of town, all partaking and stuff, like it's a win, when you have this, it's a win for, you know, show off the community, but also. I would think businesses would just be great to have more and more stuff down there, even baseball tournaments. Right, this stuff brings a ton of people in this community, so.
I think those are all the points that we've kind of identified.
Yeah.
Up to this point.
Do you think, did we miss any concern?
Can we go, I see on that other notes, we talked about that old varsity soccer field, can we just, in the open, we had control of that, what year did we give that up?
2013, so we still have irrevocable license to the entire competition area. And so we, as ways, the agreement permanent irrevocable license to that area, the competition area. We gave up, we used to have full control and the city had to come to us if they wanted to use it. When we moved soccer up to the Spartan Stadium, then our superintendent at the time suggested that we give up some control of it, probably to reduce the maintenance costs associated with it since we weren't using it. But it was probably short-sighted on our part to give that up in 2013. But it was done at the recommendation of the superintendent, and hindsight is always 20/20, and 11 years later, we probably should, not that it would change much in the last 11 years, we would have still let them use it for their purposes. It's just a matter that now we're in a spot where we have to ask back for priority on times that we're gonna need it moving forward. So it's just an odd, I think it's something we just have to try to renegotiate to get back some more priority time on it and see what that looks like. But, so, yeah.
Yeah, the only other thing that was on there, I don't know if you want to touch on it or not, was the use of the Lakeview fields.
Yeah, and those are there, those, so for other than Dan and I, who were here when Racine, when Racine didn't go all the way through, that was all one continuous area, and so from the back of Lakeview all the way through SNRA was kind of considered the area that's covered, and so we basically said we're gonna work with them on they can use the small softball fields, and so I think we just have to make sure, we have priority use of them. We use them for our own softball purposes. We also have some other groups that make use of them. I think we just have to, I think our stake in that is that, yes, they can continue to use them, but they have to use them around our, we continue to have priority access to them for our purposes. And if they want to use them, they need to coordinate with Casey on scheduling them. But for those who don't understand their history, because it was at one point all one big, big thing, and we were gonna run a road in to get the buses in, and they said, well, what if we change it into a full road and we threw some money in to extend Racine all the way through to Main Street? And so we should, rather than it being a bus trip, rather than just envision it would have gone in basically that second parking lot, and there would have been a turnaround there and back up the same way. Some people probably would prefer that it was still with the way, but it definitely changed traffic patterns. So, anything else on that, Casey, or we want to be clear that we want to maintain?
Yeah, I just look at those two fields kind of like our gym rotations,
Yeah.
like with facility use. I mean, they're under our umbrella. If they're available,
Yeah.
I don't have an issue
Yeah.
with people using them, but if they're not, like I don't want someone saying, hey, we're gonna use this.
Yes.
If you do that, like with the gyms, there's gonna be people on them, tearing them up all the time, and people arguing on who has priority.
I think it just has to be coordinated through us, if they want use of them, they just have to figure out what times and, and we can set up the blocks and figure out how that works, so. Okay, I'm gonna move us off this topic because we still got a bunch of stuff to get done and it's already 7 o'clock. Consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Only motion to approve consent agenda items as presented.
Motion by Alaska, second by Coons. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously. Action item, second reading of board policies 501.3, 501.10, 501, the whole slew of them that we talked about last month.
There aren't many changes.
This is just the stuff that we implemented through emergency action last month is largely what this is, and so they're already in effect. We just need to finish it off, so.
It's absenteeism to align with the new law, and then it's because of our new camera system on buses and in buildings, it's just policy for having cameras.
Motion to approve the second reading of board policies presented in the action items.
Motion by Coons.
Second
by Wolf. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Information items, IFB conference is coming up in November. I think
What is the date on that? We'll leave
on that Wednesday. Well, some of us will leave on Wednesday, some of us will leave early Wednesday,
20th.
and some of us will stay till Friday. Some of us might. But yeah, so Thursday the 20th is the day of the conference, so.
So we'll leave Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for those of us that are not going up for the delegate assembly, or to learn how to be a school board secretary, Cassie, she's riding with you.
I was gonna say, are we going again?
We are.
Are we going Wednesday morning early?
I think so.
That was my plan.
Yep.
But
I told her that
I
was.
think mine are in the morning on Wednesday, yeah.
20th would be Wednesday night.
We leave Wednesday, at noon.
What's the date, the 20th?
Yeah.
So it's a week or later.
We have a board meeting the 19th. It's early that week.
on that Tuesday.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which
You'll
is
be
what
staying
Cassie was
overnight.
like,
Yeah, you'll be
once
staying
a month,
overnight
probably
Wednesday night.
getting down there. I think you got the one year, it's like a late night
There's
down.
no reason to have a hotel room.
We're meeting Tuesday, so Tuesday.
Yep, Tuesday the 19th.
Perfect.
So that's all we've got there. Bree's gonna look at her schedule and figure out whether or not she's gonna be able to join us. And then hopefully we'll have the new school board representative in place at that time. Which leads me to the next item, which is applications are due at the end of the month. Bree hopefully is beating the bushes trying to get people to apply at the high school. That's one of her jobs as the current school board representative, is to try to make sure we have applicants for next year. So I think we've got at least two so far, so we're not in bad shape. But the deadline for that is the 31st. I think based on the email chain I saw today, we're trying to meet on the 4th. For the board leadership to interview the candidates. And so that means we'll, on the 18th, as a new 19th. Whatever day that is, that Tuesday is. 19th, so you'll get an email after there's a selection, and then they'll formally start attending, starting on the November board meeting, so. Depends on how many applicants we get, we could have. We've allocated, we could have up to 2, so we might have an extra body. For the board meeting, so. Any questions on either of those two?
No.
Davis, December work session scheduling, I remember we talked about why we need a work session, but my brain just is fried at this point. I don't remember why we're having a work session. I know we're having one.
Yep, December, we were hoping to have a work session to where we could talk about our financial points, data points.
That's right.
And tie our financial data points into, this is where we currently are. We know what our contract will be for teachers, next year. We know what our enrollment did this year. We estimate, 2.5% SSA, which is, pretty common every year now. Based upon all those factors, then start as a board prioritizing, based upon our numbers, our factors, and prioritizing needs for next year. We always look at, guidelines or our wish list for class size. We added a late teacher in kindergarten when we saw class size was going to be 25. So, priorities, we've got a world language teacher that we didn't get replaced. Does that get replaced? CTE, there's just a lot of priorities in opening up another section at grade level at SIS. What does that do for counseling? So just a lot of factors to talk about as we also talk about our finances and prioritizing those needs. Yeah. Like we hear with school finance, we can do anything we want to do. We just can't do everything we want to do.
So we're talking early or mid-December, but doesn't matter to me.
I think the idea would be early in December to try and avoid, because the Christmas school board meetings
I'm
also.
out of the country until December 9th.
So
We're out of the country.
School board meeting's on the 12th of December.
Really?
Yes, otherwise I'm on the Caribbean.
What a cruise ship. You can zoom.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Separate, we got school board on the 12th, if we just.
Separate meeting on the same night.
Just maybe. You wanna do it earlier?
Whatever people can.
Early is hard.
Yeah, that's true.
So I've got December's by the way.
Yes, I would love to.
We could also look at December's board meeting and do a few things to kind of shrink it down so that we have time to do some work session.
We could do a 5:30 board meeting and then 6:30 work session and make sure we keep the meeting.
Which is what day?
12.
Well, because the problem is the 19th is, the reason we're not meeting on the third Thursday is because that's the last day of school and we suspect everyone's gonna be hitting the road, and yeah, I don't want to just be me, Davis and Adam and.
The good news, and you'll hear it more, the good news, I mean, we're out on the 19th, plenty of time, prior to big Christmas. The bad news is, we're back on the 2nd.
Yes, that's right.
Never popular.
Yeah. So why don't we do that? Let's plan on the 12th. We'll do a double meeting that night. Maybe we can do pizza or sandwiches or something. Because the work session will probably take a couple hours.
Once we get our board secretary on it.
Yeah.
He's gonna write shoes.
Horse nachos. Can you bring him? Joel Cater. Horse nachos. Serve too.
Well, we have
We've
all listened to it, we just.
We get credit whether we talk about it or not. It's just a matter we were trying to talk about it and I just. Dan?
Yes, I motion to get credit for. To table, the.
Motion by Dan to table board learning. Second by
Cassie.
roll call.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
They were entertaining, but I don't know that we can get a whole lot out of talking about them tonight, so. I'm gonna move talking points forward so that Bree doesn't feel like she has to stick around. Bree, you wanna talk about talking points?
I think it's good that they're adding new classes to the school and pushing big interest in different things like apprenticeship and stuff, because I know it's hard for a lot of students to see value in that stuff.
Jamie?
Kind of the same thing. I'm excited about there being more and working towards having more opportunities on campus for our kids that are more hands-on.
Yes.
I think there is some rocks we can uncover to try to find more funding to support more of that career connected learning, and I think there is definitely. We need to draw more interest in, they mentioned the fields around information. What is the information solutions, which I assume is like data analytics and that kind of thing. And everything related to really up and coming trends in the market, what really is hot. So
even things like AI. So
yes, and there are so many different, have some market exposure to what's going on in the market that can probably bridge some gaps and find really creative ways to fund some of these different solutions here.
Adam?
I'll go with some of the SNS presentation. Like I said, I think it's a good thing we're tackling this problem, but I mean, there's good things. Our kids are really advancing. You see what the middle school's doing, so kind of piggybacking off, what's worked there and incorporating that in SIS, I think is a exciting deal. So looking forward to see what that progress looks like.
Dan?
Future farmers in there. Pretty cool. We have kids going.
We're back, baby.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, just that, kind of this district, which obviously in the past is probably a bigger draw that we have an option for kids to go and go to Clary and do some of that stuff. So I think that was pretty cool.
For me, I'll just throw out there, I like having the principals back and hearing what's going on in the buildings. Things got really crazy for a while and everyone was scattered, and we used to have it regularly, and I know it takes a little bit more time than David giving us a 2-minute summary, but I think hearing directly from the principals, because it allows opportunities for us to ask questions as they're talking about things that sometimes we miss when they're not here. So that's what I have at that front. The next item on our agenda is closed session pursuant to Iowa Code 21.51J. I need someone to.
I move that the board hold the closed session pursuant to Iowa Code 21.51J. Is that one or no?
Yep.
You got
Motion
it.
by Wolf.
Second.
Second by Alaska. Roll call.
Rockles,
Yes.
Wolf,
Yes.
Alaska,
Yes.
Coons,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
passes 5-0.
So now we Okay, we are back out of closed session at 7:40 PM. The next regular school board meeting is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, in the central office boardroom at 5:30 PM. And everyone is planning to be here, and then we'll be off to ISB following that the next couple days. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Wolf, second by roll call. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.